My name is Laura Stylez, and we're here at VFILES with Robin Hood for the virtual town hall. I'm super excited to be here today. We're going to cover so many important topics. We have incredible voices that are joining us. I'm so excited to hear each and every one of you, all of the stories. And today we're having a panel discussion about the second pillar of the census mantra and how important it is: money, power, and respect. So our conversation is going to focus on power and how we can make changes within our communities. And, you know, we have 4 beautiful human beings that are here to share some stories and kick some knowledge and let us know, you know, their experiences and how they view the world. And I'm so excited because each and every one of you have an incredible amount of people who can, you know, look up to you and really connect with you and hear where you're coming from. So we're going to start right now with having each panelist introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit of what you do. So Julie, we can start with you.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Thank you, Laura. So my name is Julie Kim, and I'm currently the Queensboro lead of NYC Census 2020. NYC Census 2020 is New York City's effort on getting all communities counted in all 5 boroughs. And so I'm a Queens resident. I grew up in Bayside and Flushing. And so I'm really excited for this opportunity to serve my borough and make sure we get all the resources we need for the next 10 years.
And we have Kyle. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Laura. My name is Kyle. I'm a stylist and creative and a citizen of New York City. And yeah.
We also have Livia Rose, the beautiful Livia Rose. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Livia Rose Johnson. I am born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I am one of the co-founders of the newly formed nonprofit Warriors in the Garden. We're just an educational nonprofit that works towards educating Gen Z and nonviolent protesting in order to create legislative change that benefits the Black community.
Amazing. Now, Julie, I want to talk to you a little bit because today we're focusing, it's money, power, and respect. But, you know, obviously one thing that I'm truly passionate about is the census, right? And I'm going to be very honest with you because today we're going to just be super transparent. I didn't even really know what the census was until like 5 years ago, till I decided to really educate myself and actually start talking to people. And I've been so surprised. And I've been so, you know, anxious because so many people in different communities feel the same way. They don't know what it means. They're scared. So I really want you to break down what the census does and how it affects our communities and why it's important for all of us to participate.
Absolutely. And honestly, I don't even remember the last census because that was 10 years ago. And really, the census is very simple. It's really a complete count of every single person who lives in the country. And the thing is, though, that it only happens every 10 years. And so the answers that we put in now will determine each state's fair share of $1.5 trillion. So for us, it might only take 10 minutes because it's only 10 questions. But the crazy thing is that it'll actually last for the next 10 years. And so all of the money that is determined and is also it actually is for schools, transportation, housing, roads and bridges, and even healthcare. And so it actually affects probably every single person's life, no matter what, you know, public program that you take in. If you go to CUNY, a public school, I mean, really anything, affordable housing, it'll affect your life. And so it's really, really important that everyone fills it out because we do not want an undercount. And today, when we're talking about power, one way that the census affects power is political representation. And a lot of people don't know this, but it determines how many congressional representatives that we have. And a fun fact is that, you know, during World War II, New York had 45 members of Congress, of the US House of Representatives. Now, New York actually only has 27. And that's the same we had in 1820s. And this year, we're actually projected to lose at least 1, possibly 2 members, you know. And so for me, that's actually, you know, such a scary thought because, you know, I can't imagine losing someone like AOC or any of our Congress members. We need our voice represented in government. And so it really affects every facet of our life. And it only takes 10 minutes. It's 10 questions. and it affects the next 10 years.
And I wanted to point something out too, especially because one of the main things that I've heard, right? People, when I talk about the census, even when I bring it up to my girlfriends, I was like, they're like, oh, no, I don't need the government knowing my information, right? And specifically in undocumented communities, you know, it's like where people are scared that you're going to give out information is going to lead to them getting deported, you know, or getting into trouble. Be like, oh no, you know, I had a little legal trouble back in the days. I don't want anybody, you know, finding me. I mean, look, the list goes on and on and on, but can you talk about how protected this information is and how to encourage people to feel safe when, you know, filling out the census?
Absolutely. And the first thing I'll acknowledge is that it makes total sense that people are scared. You know, it is scary to give, you know, the government your information, and especially if you're from a marginalized community, like if you're undocumented, if you're not on the lease, for example, a lot of people don't want people to know, you know, the government to know their information. And so the main thing I would like to say is that the information that you provide to the Census Bureau is strictly protected under Title 13. That means that no one besides the Census Bureau has access to this information, and this information cannot be used by any, you know, law enforcement. It can't be used by any other branch of the government. Your landlord can never have access to it. So it is ironclad. There is no way that anyone outside of the Census Bureau will have access to this information. It is used purely statistically. We need to know the demographics of our country so that we can make, you know, the government can make decisions on how much money each state can get, how much representation each state can get. And so I just want to reiterate that the census is for everyone, undocumented, whether or not you're on the lease, whether you're living in like a subdivided basement, citizen or not. If you live here, you count, and you deserve that money that the government is going to give out.
It's very important. Now, Livia, maybe you can tell me, have you had these conversations within your circles and in your community, and how do people feel about it?
Well, like, honestly, like, I'm gonna be completely real. I started all this work in maybe May, and before May, I had no idea. I was kind of in the same boat as you, where I was kind of like, the census might give out information, and like, there's a lot of mistrust between citizens and the government right now. So I feel like it's only fair for them to feel that way. I think that these conversations are really important. I've been having these conversations with my groups very, very like frequently. We've even had some content posted on Warriors about how the census is so important for giving a voice to like lower income communities so that they can get the money to make their communities flourish. So I think that in that sense, that's kind of where Warriors in the Garden is more focused on, just like how we can connect the census to benefiting Black lives and to take that money to like flourish Black lives. So there's not such a huge gap that there is right now.
Right. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, you know, especially in New York, where we have such a strong sense of community, and we're always having these conversations, whether it be like going out to vote, doing the census, you know, working to make, you know, marginalized groups of people where we're able to uplift them or maybe give back to the, you know, a lesser community that maybe isn't as privileged. Those are conversations that we're lucky enough to have in New York City, but outside of New York City, that kind of access and community is not available to everybody.
Right.
So it's important for us to use our influence for the better good, which is, you know, goes back to you asking, what is power? What is money? What is, you know, and if we're able to kind of use our influence for the better, you know, purpose, good, whatever, you know, that's what it's all about. And I think we have that power here in New York to kind of, you know, in these larger cities to kind of influence all these other, you know, cities that might not have what we have. So yeah, I think it's important that we continue this conversation within our community to influence people outside of our community.
One thing that you hit, Kyle, that's really important. I mean, that's why I'm so thankful to VFILES and Robin Hood for having this virtual town hall, because we're using this platform and their platforms and your platform to amplify these voices and this message. So fans of yours that follow you on social media, people who, you know, just genuinely like you for different reasons, right? All of a sudden will be like, wait a second, this person's talking about it. Wait, I didn't know this, and let me do my own research. And it's a domino effect, but it's incredibly important. To Julie's point, is like we have to be involved, because one of the ways we're going to get power is by being involved, you know what I mean, and shaking things up. Because one thing is, you know, we've seen the importance of protesting, right, and being vocal, but having a piece of the puzzle, a functioning piece of the puzzle, start moving things for us, that's the only way we're going to make things work. So let's talk about power, Kyle. Tell me what power means to you, and how do you get it, you know, for yourself, for your community?
I think power to me is knowledge. I think it is how you use that knowledge. I think it's making sure, you know, you are saying yes and no to the right things. I think it's being able to give back, you know, using your power to give back and kind of share that like knowledge as wealth. You know, because power also goes both ways, you know, and I think a lot, you know, from all of us being somewhat connected to the entertainment industry, we've seen both sides of the fence.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that, you know, it's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But I think if you are sharing knowledge for the better, I think that is power. I think that we need more of that. I don't think we have enough of it, but I think, you know, I think people are kind of catching on to that these days. I mean, we have no choice. The world is in so much turmoil that if we want to live to see another day, we have to use our power for the better.
Absolutely. Now, Livia, I know you're very vocal and you're very, you know, out there, you're organizing. Tell me, what does the word power mean to you?
So for me, power is very personal. Like as, you know, a queer Black woman, I feel like power is the ability to create change, to have a say and do what you want. In addition, I feel like power kind of can be shown through like advocating for yourself and self-love, and not submitting to people's ideas, microaggressions, and perceptions and opinions of you. I feel like focusing on that will allow you to amplify your voice and like let other people know that it's okay to speak out. You know, it's like there's a respect for yourself that you have to have in order to speak out and be like, that's not okay. And society will follow suit. Like it's proven society will follow suit. So I feel like power is kind of the balance of one, like educating and like spreading education, but also advocating for yourself, especially in the entertainment industry, and allowing yourself to focus on you and know your worth. And not allowing society's opinion of you to change what you want to say and to like make you not say as much or like, you know, mute your voice.
Julie, what would you say? Because you, I'm assuming you got into working with the Census because, I mean, power is one of the reasons, right? Teaching people the ability to seek these tools for change, right? So tell me how the term power affects you in your industry, in your field of work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, power is the ability to make your own decisions and also to be able to determine yourself what your life is going to be. And that means being in a place where, you know, people are good, you know, like people are able to live, and people are having access to housing and are not being evicted and have access to food and education. And like, I feel like that's like the baseline of making sure that you can even get to that place of having power, like just being in a place where you're feeling good about where you are financially and emotionally. And then I think it's really important to think about building power, because as an individual, I totally agree that it's so important to stand up for yourself. But I think what we've been seeing in this current environment is also how powerful it is when people come together and demand what they deserve and demand the power that they need for themselves to survive. And for me personally, being in government, I think it was surprising for me. I remember my first job in politics as a community organizer with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. And I was organizing, you know, immigrant Korean communities in Flushing and Bayside. And I remember people that I was working with or, you know, organizing with saying I've never met, you know, a young Korean woman working at the mayor's office before, you know, like that just wasn't the reality. And so for me, I want to change, you know, who gets to represent. And also I want to change, you know, from the inside out. I do feel like that's important as well, to have people who, you know, care about their communities, you know, making those decisions.
I think one of the important things, and the reason we have you guys here today, is because you guys represent your own communities, right? You've been very vocal about problems, the ups and the downs, and your transparency. So first, I want to talk about double standards, right? That in each field, and I mean, I have seen it in every field. We're going to see the double standards as women, as people that are very vocal and very expressive. We've seen it, but I'm just curious to see how has that affected you in your, you know, line of work. So Livia, let me start with you.
So how's the double standard affected me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you can see it in music, you can see it in politics, you can see it in any occupation. Historically, women have been objectified, seen as inferior to men all the time. So it's kind of like something you have to navigate, especially in activism, I feel, because I have to advocate for myself way more and see that my voice is heard and my voice is legitimate and relevant. And also in modeling, whether it's, you know, them not knowing how to do my hair, not having my foundation shade, you know, like I feel like there's a lot of times where media creates this double standard in a way, and kind of latches on to these like kind of like fetishizations and like these microaggressions to spin it how they want to spin it. And it's kind of going back to like power and self-advocating for yourself, where it's like, if you're unable to do that in these industries, they'll just completely take advantage of you. And that's an unfortunate double standard that that happens all the time. But I feel like through self-advocation and through like understanding who you are and telling people, this is who I am, you guys can't change that for like, say, for an activism way, like a good story, or for modeling, like tokenized or like fetishized. Like that is a way to get past that. But that's definitely like as a huge double standard in the media industry.
And what about you, Kyle, as an advocate for the trans community? Like, talk to me about some of your experiences.
You know, I think that, you know, like Livia was talking about, there is always going to be somebody that wants to tokenize you, but it's what I decide to share. You know, it's like if I partake in that, then I'm giving away my power. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I actually stray away from like trying to sell my identity as a trans woman, you know, because for me, I really wanted people to see my work first before I wanted them to see my identity. You know, a lot of times I show up on set and they like didn't even realize that I was like a trans woman, you know, but I never felt like I needed to disclose that beforehand because I didn't want that double standard. I didn't want them to be like, oh, well, you know, because I do have a history of working a lot in the hip hop industry, and it's a male dominated industry. Mm-hmm. And so in order for me to get in, you know, to be respected, I wanted people to see my work before they even knew who my identity was.
Right.
But I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of women who really run their own ship. And so I learned so much from them. And I learned so much from working with, you know, other women that I just take notes, and like, you know, obviously when they say no, they mean no. And I think I've learned to say no a lot more, or like to really not accept specific energies or accept, you know, being tokenized or having to be, you know, labeled.
Right. We have this platform right now, like we're here with VFILES and Robin Hood, and there's going to be youth in these small towns, you know what I mean, who've never had the opportunity to hear people like you speak, you know? A queer Black girl in the middle of nowhere who is scared to come out because their community will never accept them, you know, whether it's religion, whatever the case may be. So that's why I just think it's so important for you guys to just, you know, share as much as you can. And I appreciate it because, you know, I feel like the youth is going to mobilize us. We need them more than ever. And people like you know, Livia and Kyle and Julie, we need to make sure that your voices are heard so we can shake up the next generation and fire them up, empower them with education, right? Let them know that there are tools. There's people like Julie that are fighting for us, making sure that we all know what's happening and how to, you know, empower, how to make sure that these, you know, like these funds that exist are being fed into our communities. Because for a long time, we've been dismissed. You know what I mean? We've always been pushed to the side. And I know in the trans community, it's so deep, but I just commend you for even, you know, trying to break down as much as you can right now in the very little amount of time that we have.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think it's really, I think we lead by example by living in our truths, is what I was saying.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do. You know, not everybody is comfortable disclosing their identity. Not everybody's, and that's okay. You know, not everybody wants to be outed. Not everybody wants to be, you know, clocked. But I think by living in our truth, we are setting an example, and that's all we can give. You know, because there's going to be someone in the Midwest that might not feel comfortable in their skin, but if they see, you know, X, Y, and Z living in their truth, then, you know, maybe that'll inspire them to kind of
I love
live
that.
in theirs. Yeah.
Now, Livia, what do you think, what kind of resources do you think our government should be funding more specifically for young women in communities like yours?
So I actually saw this question. I really was like, took me a lot to think about, but I really personally feel that the community enrichment is the most essential thing for our youth and for youth women. So Planned Parenthood's where I got most of my sex education. That's essential. That is essential. Black women get evicted just as much as Black men go to prison. So financial literacy, allowing them those funds to help Black women get back on their feet. This is like the next question, but with Corona happening, I've seen so many GoFundMe's with like Black women and children or women and children out on the streets needing help. And it's like that whole thing, that the fact that they have to ask their community for money, like of course, like you should give, but these are the government should be helping these people. This shouldn't be the community taking it out of their pockets. You know what I mean? So it's also I think educational classes, at self-avocation classes and root. I didn't realize that I was beautiful because I was in a predominantly white society. And I know there's a lot of a lot of young Black women who are like that, whose parents push them to go to like better educational school in New York City. Of course, it's very diverse, but in schooling, in neighborhoods, are the most educated places in America. So you'd be surprised, but a lot of the schools are all Black or all white. So if I went to since I went to an all white school, it was hard for me to even know my voice because I felt like I was an outsider. So I feel like personally, I've been creating a lot of these like Zoom calls, Zoom talks with like these younger Black women or Black girls, like 13, 14, 15, to teach them to educate themselves, to advocate for themselves, and to know their worth. I think that if the government put more money in that, in community events and community things like that, like I recently did a Black Business Expo in Bed-Stuy, where we put almost $10,000 back into Black businesses. Things like that actually fuel the Black economy, especially for women, are essential. And I feel like if the government put more, well, you can get this by at the census because the government will have more money to do that. But if the government put more money in those, I feel like the community will flourish so that they stop blaming, you know, Black parents, Black families for being like impoverished, for not being able to like to educate their kids, when at the end of the day, there's really, for essential workers in the Black community, it's really either educate your kid, staying home and educating your kid, or going to work and putting food on the table. And that shouldn't be an option. You know what I mean? That's something they have to choose between.
Yeah. And what about you, Julie? On a personal note, I want to see, I'm just curious to see, you know, and you can talk about coming from like as a census representative. I want to hear, you know, your answer to this question, but also on a personal note, like, what do you think our government should be funding more of for young women in your community?
Yeah, I think for me, I think the number one thing that came to mind was education. And the reason why is because, at least for me, I think the cost of education has just become so outrageous that I just don't understand how, people are even able to get educated, however, will leave with so much student debt. And so I feel like there's like kind of like a conversation, which is that you need to get as much education as you can. However, at the same time, there's no support for that. Like we're not getting enough funding, or even our public education system, right? As we were talking about with, K through 12. But then once you go to college, our public funded colleges and universities their resources are being cut every year. That's like the most expendable thing. And so I guess for me personally, I feel like education, and someone, who has lived through 2 recessions, I just feel like, we were promised that we get an education and get a good job, but, that hasn't been the case. And so I would like to see the strength of public educational institutions come back. I would like to see more affordable options for education, and not $50,000, $60,000 a year price tags where we'll be spending the rest of our lives paying that off. So yeah, education for me is a big one.
Yeah, I guess, circling back to the census, this is why it's important, right, for us to fill out the census to make sure we get some of these funds allocated to our communities. Like, it blows my mind that I just, first of all, like you said, the census comes around every 10 years, and this one time that we have to fill out the census, it's going to determine funds for each and every one of our communities for so long. I feel like I was like, we have to come up with a better, solution. But for now, this is what we have. And again.
And Laura, I have just one other thing to add on the fact that like a lot of people haven't heard about the census is, the census has become so politicized. Recently there was a citizenship question that was added, and we have to really think about, why did they take that effort to, put that question on and make people feel like, wait, I'm not a citizen, I shouldn't fill this out, like to kind of stoke that fear. And I think that really shows actually the importance of the census, how much, people are fighting to make sure not everyone's filling it out. And so I just really think that, people underestimate how much the census actually means, because people are definitely advocating, on the other side, which is, immigrants, undocumented folks, like, marginalized communities should not be filling out the census. So I definitely just wanted to put that out there.
No, 100%. Because I know that when I've spoken to other people who are activists who are pushing for the census, other panels that I've done, the main question always has been citizenship, right? Because that's why a lot of people are scared. And them trying to force that question onto the census, I was like, if the census wasn't so important, they wouldn't try to scare you, just like voting, right? We have seen the dangers of oppression. I don't know if you guys saw what was happening in Georgia. Like, to me, it was just like, I cannot believe it is 2020 in the United States, and folks in Georgia are waiting 9 to 12 hours just to vote. And if our voice wasn't so necessary and so powerful, they wouldn't go to these lengths to try to discourage us from voting. And that's why I keep telling everyone, like, guys, if you're tuning in right now, we're going to keep pushing this in. Register to vote. If you plan to vote by mail, please give yourself enough time. They are trying to mess with that too. So give yourself enough time. You can go online, go to vote.org, go whatever. There's so many sources that we have just to find out where your polling places are, and if you can vote early. And if you plan to vote by mail, give yourself enough time to do it, because we have seen disasters. And this time around, we need your voice to be counted more than ever. Voting, locally, and the census, it's this money that belongs to us that we need, that our communities need. So can you give us the website real quick, the official census website?
My2020census.gov.
How you guys personally have felt the response of COVID within your neighborhoods, wherever you live in, and tell me what you want to see more. So Olivia, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Crown Heights. And as I said before, there's just like a lot of more homelessness. There's a lot, it's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that these are the people who are keeping the lights on in the city, keeping the city running during these times. They're the ones that are being affected the most. For eviction purposes, that's a lot. We've been focusing, for Words Ago, we've been focusing a lot on evictions. And there's like a lot of landlords that are being very opportunistic, like, you know, in this time. So what we've been doing is putting these little flyers up being like, know your rights. And we put them all over all these landlords, and they've been taking them down because they want this money. So it's really just like to live in a world, and this is the true world of America, where money, capital, and property is more important than human life and human flourishing and community flourishing. It's like COVID's just brought that out. So it's like, it's horrible in a way because so many people are dealing with this, and so many people are on the streets, and so many people who are working to be a part of this community and to contribute, and like, you know, going through that whole like American dream thing where they're doing everything right and working harder, are kind of left on the streets. But it's also like opened a lot of people's eyes that this is the reality of our country, and it's not the land of the free, and it's not all these things that people want to make it. It's very capitalistic. Our priorities are all messed up. I think COVID's kind of exposed that in a way, especially in my community, because my community is really like, there's so many like you know, community fridges around that me and my group have been refilling. There's so many different things. It's like, we're really fueling ourselves right now. The government is not helping us in Crown Heights at all. We're really fueling ourselves. I think there's a lot of communities that are doing that. So it kind of just shows you, like, we have to depend on us during these times.
What about you?
Me?
Yes. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID has really exposed so much, you know, I think it's exposed America. I think it's exposed who they're really here for. I think that, you know, Olivia touched on it a little bit, but, you know, you see all these GoFundMes, you see all of these, like, you know, community organizations. And I talked about this with a friend, but I only see our community fueling back into our community. Mm-hmm. So it's like the underprivileged is the only thing that's helping the underprivileged, which I think is really fucked up. You know, the creatives that run the city, we're all struggling, right? Like, nobody is everyone's kind of figuring out what tomorrow brings. And so that's really scary. And, you know, just being in town, just seeing like all of, again, community, like, you see the elderly line up for free food from all these like little mom and pop shops, but you don't see a Whole Foods doing that. You don't see a Trader Joe's doing that. It's like, who is helping who here? And I think that's really scary. It's open. I mean, and people have made more off of unemployment than they ever had on their 9 to 5. Like, what is that? Like, it's crazy. It's actually just, this country is psychotic.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Like, it's also though really empowering on the low, because it's kind of like, me seeing that just means like, okay, so my community can do it. Like, we're doing it, you know? So yeah. It's like really shitty because it's like, okay, the government's not doing shit for us, but the fact that we can fuel ourselves and that we're still like, we're still above water, you know, we're still floating, we're still afloat, shows that like, we have a power that we can, if we work towards and if we like harness, we can make such big change. So like, it's you know, it's definitely an awakening call. It's really shitty because it exposes America, but it's also an awakening call to our local communities that we can do so much.
So let's talk about something a little personal. Like, are there any times in your life that you felt powerless? Going back to the whole topic of money, you know, about power and respect. Have you guys felt powerless, and how did you overcome that? I mean, Julie, you as being somebody who's worked in government at a very young age, and you've experienced stuff that, you know, very few people in your age bracket at that time. Can you talk about a little bit about something you went through specifically, or just in general?
I'll say, for me personally, a recent memory really is the 2016 election. I'm really not trying to bring that back, but, you know, I was working at the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs at that time. And I remember feeling very powerless because I knew that there was now going to be much less that we could do as a city to help protect and fight for our immigrants. Like, that was just the reality of it. You know, we're getting attacked every week, things coming down the pipeline every week, temporary protection status gone, like, family separation, like just recently, obviously, a lot of people might have heard of the mass hysterectomies that are happening, like those kind of atrocities. Like, when 2016 happened, I felt powerless, even as a city worker, because I was out of the work that we were doing, like IDNYC, making sure every undocumented immigrant, anyone in the city who wants an ID card, so they can go into school and pick up their children, because you can't do that with an ID, by the way. Making sure that we have that kind of card so everyone can do those basic things that a lot of people don't think about. I was really proud of that work. And then, to see all of that of being regressed, like a lot at once was a lot. That was the time when I actually co-founded the Asian American Feminist Collective, which we have been working with a lot. And I banded together with a bunch of Asian American artists, activists, scholars, and we started the Asian American Feminist Collective because that was the time of the Women's March, and everyone was getting activated. And so now that has grown into something where we are doing a lot of different organizing work. So that was something great that came out of it, but that was definitely a time when I did feel very powerless.
Wow. Kara, what about you? Talk about, a point in your life that you felt powerless, and what did you do to overcome that?
I mean, I think as humans, we always go through having those emotions of, being powerless or not having an option. And maybe Livia can relate with, being in the modeling industry. A lot of times we're torn between having to sell our identity or make that bag to pay for your rent or whatever it is. It's like, those are the times where you feel powerless, because it's like, do I take the pickle juice and be like selling my soul down a river in order to get the money that I need to sustain life, So it's like, and how do you take that power back? Is it saying no? Is it speaking up? And I think now more than ever, people are willing to listen to your concerns, because they know that there's a consequence to not. And so I think feeling powerless when it comes to, what you just truly believe in is right or wrong versus money can make you feel powerless, but also you are able to take back that power by saying no, or, kind of helping them navigate to where you want it to be and where you feel comfortable enough to take the job, make the money, and then keep it pushing, So yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson of feeling powerless, is to kind of take it back by speaking up.
What about you, Livia, in your world, from modeling to, activism? Like, talk to me and give me an example of something you've been through where you felt powerless and what you do. Yeah.
So I totally agree that there were times where I'd have to literally leave a set and not even do the job because I felt fetishized or tokenized, and I didn't have the voice I have now to be like, I mean, I've always been my most authentic self, but navigating like, having the finances to live my life, and also like staying true to myself and not giving into like not being who I am for that was two very hard things. I feel like the time I felt most powerless was actually not really at a modeling thing, just because like I've always just like, I'd rather have not had the money than sell myself out. That's just how I am, just because like that's always been my morals for me. But it was more when I think it was when George Floyd died, where I was just like, this is never ending. And I felt like no matter how much I do, no matter how much I fight, people will keep dying. And I was in a really, really like big state of just like, there's nothing I can do. like I'm just, my people are just going to get murdered. There's nothing I can do. And how I overcame that was really speaking up and speaking out and just going to the streets and not caring who saw or who cared, and just being like, this is what we need to do, and being active. And I feel like that activation allowed me to become my true self, you know, in any industry, become my true self and be able to really advocate for myself in a way where it's like, I know who I am. Like, I know my worth. I know my power. I know my strength, you know, I know the rights I have, and I know the beauty that I have. And so it's like taking that and understanding who you are was how I really like overcame those feelings, because it's like, it's really the time I only really feel powerless because of society and because of what society like pushes onto me or implements onto me just to identify who I am for me, is when I really feel powerless. And I think, just kind of like, as Kyle said, like bringing that back and taking that back and reclaiming that in the best way you can is how you really overcome that. And that can be applied to anything, because I feel like media and society always tries to re-identify what people are, especially minorities, especially intersectional minorities. So I think that I've never regretted not speaking up, and it's a reminder of my true self and my true form by speaking up. So through protesting and through like understanding who I am and through being okay saying no, because it was more protesting and the media coming at me, where I learned to say no, because there were times where I felt like I was making the movement more digestible. I was tired of all these cameras coming at me, not coming at my dark skinned like sisters and brothers. And it kind of like showed me that like the media, yes, they may be advocating a story, like they may be like putting a story out there that needs to be heard, but they're doing it in the way that they want. And you can tell them no. Like you don't have to allow for them to do that. And I think that advocating for the people around me who are less fortunate than me was a way of advocating for myself, and away from like kind of taking my power back and taking the power for my community back. So yeah.
No, I think it all ties back, man. It all ties back to power. You know what I mean? It all ties back to power, because it's like we've created these, we're fighting power, we're creating power for ourselves, we are educating ourselves, and I think we're in a very special place right now where, to Kyle's point, there's accountability, right? And we have community to back us up. When, you know, you have a problem, or you have a problem, you have a voice right now, and there's community around us, something that we didn't always have, you know, and that's people actually banding together and feeling, you know, empowered to stick up for one another. And we need more of it, more than ever. We need more voices. We need more people, you know, banding together. Like Julie said, our communities are stronger together. And I think that's something that we should continue to push. Now, I just want to open the floor to just some final words and some final statements from each and every one of you. We've had such a powerful, passionate conversation, and I feel like there's so much more to say. And, you know, and we'll kick it off with Kyle. You know, anything you want to say? Any final words, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to using our power for the better and our influence for the better is really important right now more than ever, because, you know, we need to get out there and vote. We need to do these census. We need to make sure that we're all accounted for and that our voices are heard, so that way we can make for better education, make for, you know, give back to the community where it's needed. And so I just want to say to everyone that has a platform online to really use that space, take that space up to really educate and spread awareness and make sure that we're all being proactive to making, you know, our community a better place and, you know, the world a better place.
Livia?
For me, some of my final statements is that, like, throughout protesting and doing more modeling gigs, I've realized that, like, if everyone advocates for their community, we'll all be heard. You know what I mean? There's always a space for you. You know, there's never, even if you feel like there's no space for you, there's always a space for you. And so to know your worth, your power, to know your strength, to know your rights, and to know like your beauty, and just to know for women all over, whatever type of woman you are, just to know who you are and identify with yourself, who you are, and don't let anyone else's identity be contingent on yours, is really like, it's the most essential thing for getting power and for harnessing it and for making change with it. Because you can't do anything. And I've realized that because in this, I've had it's been so emotional, and it's honestly been a bit traumatic, this whole protesting thing. And to advocate and to learn and to heal myself and to care about yourself and to know about yourself is the only way that you can advocate for others. So first, advocate for yourself, advocate for the people who are immediately around you, is the I think the best way to create change in the country, in the world. If everyone advocates for everyone around them, like, we'll all be good. You know what I mean? So I feel like kind of first prioritizing yourself and then second prioritizing your community is essential. And you guys should all practice it. Yeah.
And Julie, my2020census.com. Thank you so much.
My2020census.gov.
Yeah, my2020census.gov.
2020 census.
Okay, let's get that. My2020census.gov. Today,
20census.gov.
we're gonna my2020census.gov, or just Google it too. That's what I did. I was like, I just Google it up, and you have all the information right on your phone, on your computer. But it's so important. Encourage everybody, teach them, talk to them. Let them know that they should not be scared. This money is so important for our communities. We need it. We need the funding. We need to make sure that these budgets are allocated to the things that we need. And Julie, I just want to say thank you for being such an important playing such an important role for being a voice for everyone, and especially the youth, because it's important that we know that we shouldn't be scared, and educate us on why we need to be present this time around. Any final words, Julie?
Oh, I'm just so grateful to be here today. I guess my final word is something I've been thinking about a lot, is especially during this time where it feels so crazy, is to take care of yourself. I've been really getting a lot of comfort from the Nat Ministry. I don't know if folks follow that on Instagram. Just, prioritizing rest, not having to do everything at once, like prioritizing time to make art and to write and do something creative and make sure that, that's not taken away from you. And being with others in community and working with others, I think really helps to get out of kind of that funk of like being in quarantine right now and not really sure what, we can do as an individual. And yeah, if you can make sure everyone fills up the census, we have, I believe, 13 days. So 13 days until this is over. And if you can tell all your friends and family, make sure they fill it out, put it on your Instagram, your Twitter, all of that. Really trying to get that money right now.
Yes, please. I want to thank each and every one of you for being so open, so vulnerable, for touching so many, important subjects, and just being such a powerful force in each of your communities. And one thing that I took away today is I just want to remind everybody, all of us are stronger together, and let's advocate for ourselves and each other. And listen, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but just know that one thing that we have the power is, we have the power to speak up and to use our voice. We have the power to vote. People died for the right for us to vote and to get involved. You know what I mean? And fill out the census. So I want to thank you guys. Thank you to VFILES. Thank you to Robin Hood for allowing this conversation and sharing their platform and uplifting, these voices, your voices. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank
you so much. Thank you.